My beloved husband, Steve, seems genuinely concerned about the health and safety of his mother who lives alone. I often see him visiting her house every day and occasionally handing her money. However, one day, he secretly took our home safe. He seemed to desire my longtime savings. I found out about this when I saw a message he mistakenly sent to me. According to that, it was revealed that instead of using our couple's savings for his mother, he was spending it on club girls. I was shocked by this and confronted him directly. What's that message about?
I don't know what you're talking about, but more importantly, Mia, I intend to take your savings.
Why should I give you the money I've been saving by being frugal? Return the safe immediately.
This is compensation to me.
Steve said with full confidence.
You've left me alone to take care of my mother all this time. You haven't fulfilled your duties as a wife. Legally, I could demand compensation, but I'll handle this like an adult. I'll forgive you with this money.
What are you talking about?
I know how hard you've worked to save on that low salary. That's the only thing I appreciate.
My anger reached its peak when Steve ended the call with a smile. I can't forgive you for easily taking the money I worked hard and spent time to save. Do you realize you've genuinely angered me? I am Mia, a 63-year-old housewife. Our eldest daughter, Naomi, got married 2 years ago, started her own family, and moved out of our home. Since then, the daily life at our home consists of just me and my husband, Steve. Steve and I first met while working at the same company. As we collaborated on various projects, our relationship gradually deepened. And after he confessed his feelings, we began our journey as a couple. His slightly exaggerated way of speaking and his assertiveness when making decisions were initially refreshing and attractive to me. As our relationship deepened, I was introduced to his mother and was warmly welcomed by her. As a result, our marriage discussions went surprisingly smoothly. I happily got married at the age of 33, and 2 years later, our charming daughter, Naomi, was born. During Naomi's birth, I faced significant physical strain and was advised by the doctor not to have any more children. However, having been blessed with a healthy daughter, I was content with our family size at that time. But in our daily life after marriage, a significant issue arose between us. I came to know after our marriage that Steve deeply loved his mother. Even when I suffered from morning sickness during pregnancy, or when I began part-time work and the responsibilities of housework and childcare increased, every weekend, Steve would invariably visit his mother's house. Steve, I wish you'd value our family time, especially on weekends. We're both busy with work during the week, so I want you to spend more time playing with Naomi on weekends. I expressed my genuine wish, and he looked a bit troubled.
But my mom can't drive, so she'll be in trouble if I don't help her.
It's only a 5-minute walk to the train station from this area, and there's a bus stop right in front of us. It's clear that people in this downtown area use bicycles for their daily shopping and other needs.
But what if there's an accident or she gets hurt when riding a bike? Have you thought about the risks?
In the midst of Steve's emotional words, I tried to seek understanding while feeling a bit perplexed. I want you to value our family time as well. Don't you think you need to spend time with us every weekend? We are also part of your family, aren't we?
So you're saying I should just leave my mom alone?
That's not what I'm saying. I just don't want you to miss out on watching Naomi grow up. A look of displeasure appeared on Steve's face.
My mom is living alone right now. Can't you feel her loneliness and isolation even a little? Traditionally, isn't it the daughter-in-law's role to take care of and look after the mother-in-law? Since you can't, I'm doing it instead. I'd appreciate some gratitude.
You say that, but you never helped with changing Naomi's diapers or caring for her when she cried at night when she was a baby. Between your mother and your own daughter, Naomi, who is more important to you?
It's my mom.
I was shocked by Steve's declaration and was left speechless. If Naomi's school arts festival and the regular checkup day for Steve's mother at the clinic happened to be on the same day, Steve prioritizes driving his mother to the hospital, even though he knows there's good transportation available. Even when Naomi has a significant role as the final runner in the school's relay race, Steve chooses to go shopping with his mother. When I had to be hospitalized for 2 weeks due to stress-induced stomach ulcers, Steve never once visited me. Instead, he left all responsibilities, like meeting with doctors and laundering my clothes, to Naomi. He was just in middle school at the time. One day, Naomi reached her breaking point and raised her voice at Steve.
Dad, how can you not be concerned when Mom is feeling so bad? I wish you would be by her side, especially when she's sick. If you're so worried about Grandma, why don't you consider living with her?
It would look like I've abandoned my family if we live separately. I can't do that.
What do you mean by that?
After I was discharged from the hospital, Naomi told me the details of their conversation, making me wonder where Steve's feelings truly lay. So I asked him directly, "Why did you marry me?"
Getting married and having kids was a responsibility as the eldest son. Marrying you seemed right age-wise and was a suitable choice. But to be honest, when you gave birth to a girl, I really wished for a boy.
Hearing Steve's words, I was left speechless. It seemed he only viewed me as a machine to produce children. He never helped with everyday household tasks or taking care of our child. Yet his attitude was strangely arrogant. Whenever he had a small argument with Naomi, he was still growing up.
Do you even realize whose hard work provides for this household? If you don't listen to me, then leave this house.
He would shout angrily. I was fed up with the situation and decided to end our marriage by the time Naomi graduated from college. Thus, I had been secretly saving money from my part-time job. On the other hand, Steve's concern for his mother-in-law grew stronger day by day. Indeed, it's natural to genuinely care for a parent who has surpassed 80 years of age. However, every time he visited her house on weekends, she would cook meals with her own hands and, though slowly, would climb up and down the stairs, showing she was still very energetic and healthy. From household chores, laundry, to tending to trees in the garden, she managed everything on her own. Yet, when she went to see a chiropractor, Steve not only provided transportation but also covered the treatment costs. He became extremely distressed upon learning that she had fallen and injured her finger, even spending the night by her side. Moreover, he even considered taking legal action against the minor step on private property that caused her injury. When Steve approached retirement, he was still in good health and very energetic, so I thought it was certain that he would find another job. However, he reacted unexpectedly, expressing joy by saying,
"Now I can comfortably visit Mom every day."
Consequently, he started visiting his mother's house every weekday evening without fail. On the other hand, our daughter Naomi had gotten married and moved out, starting her new life with her husband in an apartment in the neighboring city. As a result, I often found myself dining alone many nights. Admittedly, with Steve being absent, not having to prepare his dinner did ease things a bit. However, even when I returned home tired after working all day, I was the one doing all the housework, while he would relax, watching TV. Seeing him like that, I couldn't help but get upset. One day, by chance, I saw the contents of a bank book that was left on the desk, and I was astonished by what I saw. From the bank account that we, as a couple, had shared for many years, large amounts of money had been frequently withdrawn, and the remaining balance was just under $100. When Steve returned from his parents' house, I earnestly questioned him. "Steve, have you been giving this shared savings to your mother?" As I pressed him, he looked slightly surprised for a moment, but then quickly put on a displeased face.
Why would you say that? How I use the money I earned is my business.
But that's the money we share as a couple.
So what? I'm the main breadwinner. Naturally, I decide how to use that money. It's absurd for you to complain when you just earn a bit from your part-time job. If you're dissatisfied, you should earn more yourself.
I felt a wave of despair, and the weight of the situation made my head spin. I couldn't believe that the precious savings we'd been diligently setting aside for our old age and unexpected expenses had all been given to Steve's parents without my consent or knowledge. To be honest, given this situation, I strongly felt like filing for divorce immediately. However, considering the complexity of the process and how to divide our assets, I hesitated. I could also demand alimony due to Steve's continuous verbal abuse. But given our current circumstances, it was clear that would be challenging. I no longer had any feelings for Steve, but I didn't want to put myself in a disadvantaged financial position. And almost every day, right around the time I would return home from work, Steve would head to his mother's house. I told myself that, at least with this pattern, I could minimize face-to-face encounters with him and somehow continued with our married life. However, as a result, I began to feel a sense of pressure just by being in the same space as Steve. One evening, while I was in the kitchen planning the next day's menu using a recipe book, I felt Steve's footsteps coming down the stairs. I didn't have a room of my own, so the usual place where I spent my time was this kitchen. Even though Steve had his own study, I felt a slight annoyance wondering why he came here. Against my expectations, he then spoke to me.
Mia, I want to ask you something.
What is it?
How much money have you saved up by yourself, specifically?
I looked up in surprise at his question, and he was gazing at me with a smirk as if he had some ulterior motive. While I was a bit taken aback by his sudden question, I sincerely responded, "Actually, I have securely stored about $240,000 in a safe."
You mean the safe hidden in your closet?
Exactly. Is there something about that safe?
No, not really. I just thought that since you're so responsible, you might have saved up a significant amount.
Steve's slightly tense expression made me feel a faint unease, as if there was some hidden meaning behind his words. That night passed without any particular events, and we quietly welcomed the morning. Although I had the day off from work, I got up at 6 a.m. as part of my daily routine to prepare breakfast. However, Steve, who usually wakes up early, was nowhere to be seen even after 9 a.m. Thinking it was odd, I went to the study on the second floor where Steve usually slept. As part of our living arrangements, I slept in the main bedroom while Steve slept in the adjacent study. After receiving no response to my knocking, I hesitantly and slowly opened the door to find his bed empty. A gut feeling of unease crossed my mind. I quickly headed to the room used as storage and checked the closet. The previously mentioned black safe had disappeared. Much to my shock, instead of the safe, I saw a divorce paper with Steve's signature and seal already affixed. The surprise of being preempted by him and the regret tightened my chest. Although I had secretly resolved to divorce, having it actually move forward made my feelings complex. More than anything, the fact that he made that decision first was, for some reason, frustrating. But if he felt the same way, the administrative procedures would probably proceed smoothly. On my way home after submitting the divorce papers at the city hall, I decided to contact my now distant mother-in-law, albeit with some nervousness. Even if we had grown distant, I felt an obligation to inform her of such a significant decision as divorce.
Hello, Mia.
In a slightly subdued and low voice, my mother-in-law responded. She had a somewhat somber personality, which I had always been concerned about. It's been a while. Actually, I've decided to divorce Steve. I felt it was right to inform you formally, so I reached out.
Really? That's surprising.
I thought Steve might have already told you, but I felt I should also say it directly from me.
No, he hasn't mentioned anything. I understand.
Her overly calm reaction left me feeling a mix of surprise and slight bewilderment. It's a bit surprising to hear that Steve hasn't mentioned anything, even though you see each other every day. My words carried a subtle hint of irony, but my mother-in-law's next words were unexpected.
To be honest, I haven't seen Steve since New Year's. He's been saying he's busy with work and hasn't visited much recently. Before Naomi started high school, back when she was in middle school, he used to come over almost every week without being asked. I wonder why he's changed so much. He's truly a neglectful son.
I couldn't hide my astonishment at my mother-in-law's slightly bitter and lonely words. A question started to form in my mind. Where on earth had Steve been going every day for the past 20 years? As I was lost in thought, my cell phone began to vibrate. When I checked the screen, there was a message from Steve. Reading through it, I felt an even greater sense of shock.
Jessica, I'm setting up a lavish champagne tower for your birthday, so look forward to it.
For a moment, I couldn't comprehend the meaning of the message. A champagne tower refers to a glamorous performance often done in nightclubs and upscale bars. It involves glasses stacked in a pyramid shape with champagne poured over them. But why would he tell me this? Then, message after message with similar content kept arriving. This left me utterly confused.
Thanks to Mia fully believing I'm visiting our family home every day, I live without any suspicion. This really helps. Because of that, frequent dates with Jessica are possible. By the way, Jessica, I'm a successful IT company owner, so I'm never short on cash. I currently have about $220,000 at hand. Whatever you desire, like luxury bags or branded watches, I can easily buy them for you.
While I was squinting to read the message filled with colored heart emojis, the message suddenly disappeared. It was replaced by a message revoked notification. At that moment, amidst surprise and confusion, I quickly contacted Steve. I directly asked, what did that message mean?
I have no idea what you're talking about. But Mia, I'm going to use your savings, okay?
Why do I need to give you my savings? Give me the key to the safe right now.
It's for alimony.
Steve said with a raised voice.
Considering you've always left the care of my mother only to me and abandoned your duties as a wife, I could actually ask for much more in alimony. But I'm very generous, so I'll settle for this amount.
What are you talking about?
I commend you for diligently saving your monthly salary, but you might have to start saving from scratch again.
Immediately after Steve confidently hung up, I trembled with rage. The intense anger swirling within me, my fists clenched tightly. I won't let him easily take away the money I've saved through daily frugality and hard work. This might be the first time I've ever been this angry. Steve, if you think this is over, you're sorely mistaken. A few days later, as I was checking my phone notifications in the car during my evening commute, I noticed an astonishingly large number of missed calls. It was clear they were all from Steve. Probably he had called repeatedly, wanting the password to access the savings inside the safe. While I was pondering this, a new call came in.
About the money.
Did you call a locksmith to open the safe? The security code was my date of birth. The fact you didn't know that shows how little you thought of me.
I didn't.
I responded, slightly amused by Steve's weak protest.
The thing is, that money was actually counterfeit. I got arrested by the police while shopping.
Oh really? That must have been quite an ordeal. Just imagining his situation made me laugh uncontrollably. However, Steve earnestly conveyed the unfortunate episode he had experienced.
Being interrogated by the police in front of so many people, it was more embarrassing than I could have ever imagined. The officers seemed to struggle not to laugh at me. I never thought that the stationery I bought online would be the cause.
Sure, that sticky note looks like a bill, but the difference is clear if you think about it. Did you really need that much money?
I didn't expect it to turn out this way, Mia.
I thought of pointing out Steve's mistake calmly.
You used to be more straightforward and always listened to what I had to say. But now, I can't tell what's on your mind. I was truly shocked that you tried to deceive me with fake money.
Regardless of how you feel, it doesn't concern the present me. In fact, I've been thinking of divorcing too.
Are you saying this to confuse me? Also, if the money in the safe was counterfeit, is the real money in the bank?
I moved the money to the bank for safety when your behavior started becoming erratic.
So that's what happened.
After the call ended, I felt something was off and decided to talk to Naomi. His behavior has been getting more and more strange. I'm worried he might cause some problems.
You don't have to worry about him anymore. You and he are on separate paths now.
Comforted by Naomi's words, I decided to put aside my concerns about Steve for a moment. However, as expected, the next day while I was on my way to work, Steve had apparently broken into my house and seemed to have taken my cherished bank book and bank seal. That evening, as I was relaxing in my room, I received an urgent call from the bank I frequently use.
Ms. Smith, can we talk? We seem to have a slight issue.
Yes, what's the matter?
Actually, a man claiming to be your husband is extremely angry. He's upset about some withdrawal issues with the account.
From the banker's voice, I could sense evident confusion and anxiety. Holding my forehead, I deeply pondered. Even after cutting ties with him, the troubles from Steve seemed unending.
Before this becomes a bigger issue, we wanted to reach out and discuss it with you.
I'm truly sorry for the inconvenience. I no longer have any association with that man. If you need to involve the police or take any action, please do so without any hesitation.
Understood. Thank you for your response.
Afterward, in the silence of my room, I reflected on my apologies to the bank. I was flabbergasted that Steve had the notion he could withdraw money from his ex-wife's account. The idea that he didn't know such a basic thing even at 60 was hard to believe. After finishing household chores, I immersed myself in the bathtub to unwind. At that moment, I heard the ringtone of my cell phone from the distant washroom. Instinctively, I felt it might be from Steve. Anticipating another bothersome call from him, I first got out of the bath. I turned down the phone's volume and then returned to the tub. Before going to bed, I checked my phone. There were a surprising number of calls and messages, more than I had expected. However, at that time, I chose to completely ignore them. I drifted into a deep sleep. The next evening, with a heavy heart, I called Steve. His voice was filled with anger.
What are you thinking? Why can't I withdraw money from the account? I was summoned by the police and had a rough time. What did you do?
Legally, we're no longer husband and wife. We're strangers. Therefore, you can't access my bank account. As I calmly stated the facts, Steve raised his voice in shock.
What are you saying? You really submitted the divorce papers?
Yes, I submitted them right away.
How could you? Without even my consent. You haven't played the role of a proper wife.
Although I was angered by his illogical words, I firmly counted. The documents you left had your signature. So, wasn't it natural for me to submit them? Then why did you leave those papers there in the first place?
What are you saying? I think as my wife, you shouldn't speak like that.
You keep saying wife. I'm tired of that word. I think further conversation is pointless with someone trying to use my money without permission. As I strongly retorted, Steve seemed taken aback and lost for words. I hung up the phone, resolved to decide on my next steps regarding him. About a week later, exhausted from work, I returned home to find Steve waiting for me at the front door. Given that I had cut off all forms of communication with him, he must have come to convey something directly to me. As I parked my car and got out, Steve called out, unable to wait.
Hey, Mia. Are you jealous of me?
Huh? What are you talking about?
Are you trying to attract my attention by telling Jessica about my past and secrets? Is this some kind of strategy to get me back?
I finally understood why he was smirking. He clearly misunderstood the situation. I sighed deeply, and as I walked towards my house, I said, "Let's talk inside," inviting Steve in. Once seated at the living room table, I placed several clear photographs in front of Steve. The photos showed Steve and a young woman dressed in an elegant dress, walking joyfully through high-end shops, trendy cafes, and popular movie theaters. As the woman smiled with sparkling eyes, Steve seemed to be blissfully entranced by her side. I had a detective monitor your activities. I hoped you might have matured considering my mother-in-law, but this is the reality.
Hannah, you still care about me, don't you?
I grimaced at his taunting words.
I get that you're irritated because Jessica and I are on good terms.
In fact, Jessica and I have decided to move forward as friends, but many other girls are attracted to me. Steve puffed out his chest, smiling smigly.
To be honest, I'm surprisingly popular. Even if you're jealous, new women will keep coming to me.
You're that popular. So what? With a defiant attitude, he reached out to me and demanded,
I've told you before about the compensation for disrespecting my mother. Sure, submitting the divorce papers on your own was wrong, and I apologize for that. But separately, hand over all my savings to me. I've been struggling because I don't have enough money for my leisure activities lately.
In that case, I also have the right to demand compensation from you. Slowly smiling, I placed a thick envelope on the table. I took out several official documents from the envelope. These were formally crafted papers, prepared in consultation with a lawyer. To a visibly surprised Steve, I began to explain calmly. This is compensation for using my mother's name as an excuse to frequent cabarets for 20 years, neglecting your family. Additionally, you arbitrarily used about $90,000 that I diligently saved from our joint savings. You intend to repay that properly, don't you? Steve's face turned pale instantly. It seemed he never expected to be demanded compensation. Seeing his selfish thinking, I sighed internally. Unlike your assumptions and excuses, my claims are based on the law.
You're joking. Where do you expect me to come up with such a large amount of money?
As Steve shouted with anger-filled expression, I calmly replied, if it's difficult to pay the full amount at once, I'm willing to accept payment in installments. It's only natural for you to atone for not fulfilling your duties as a husband and father, and for destroying the happiness of our family, isn't it? I stared into Steve's eyes, continuing my words with firm determination. I'm considering taking this to court, but that would just result in unnecessary financial loss for both of us. Are you okay with that, or what will you do? After those words, the room was filled with tension for a while. Finally, Steve spoke.
Okay, I'll pay the money. That settles it, right?
Upon hearing his answer, I felt a brief moment of joy inside and promptly began to schedule a formal discussion with my attorney. However, Steve, being his stubborn self, did not easily give in. In fact, he frequently expressed his dissatisfaction during the official meeting with the attorney.
The issue at hand is because Mia submitted the divorce papers without my consent. I never initially thought about getting divorced.
Are you still arguing that point?
Normally, don't both parties discuss properly before submitting?
Smiling slightly, I presented him with evidence of his infidelity, obtained from a detective agency, to counter his argument. Did you end up writing the divorce papers because Jessica told you she thinks living with Steve would be fun, and that made your heart flutter? Steve's expression momentarily showed irritation, but he quickly brushed it off and said in a bright, optimistic voice,
That's right. So, let's call off the divorce. I really never wanted to get divorced from the beginning. We should be able to start over, right?
Hope seemed to shine in Steve's eyes. However, the attorney and I responded coolly to the proposal. We felt that behind Steve's motive was a convenient idea of wanting to avoid paying compensation and justifying the misuse of funds in the joint name of the couple. The attorney, with weary eyes narrowed, spoke earnestly to Steve.
Steve, retracting a divorce isn't simple. If you choose that path, there's a possibility of disputes arising in mediation or court with Mia.
I don't mind.
However, during that process, evidence clearly showing that your intentions changed before and after submitting the divorce papers will be required. Do you have that evidence?
Although Steve was slightly flustered, he lowered his head and pondered deeply. After several discussions to resolve the compensation issue, an agreed amount was determined after 3 months. On a weekend afternoon, Naomi left her child with her husband and took some time to visit my house. We had a relaxed time reflecting on the recent events, sitting on the living room sofa with coffee in hand.
Mom, when you found out about Dad's lie during a phone call with Grandma, that's when you decided to hire a private investigator to look into his activities, right?
Exactly. At first, I suspected he might be involved with a young hostess, but when I thought about it rationally, it's hard to believe a woman in her 20s would be seriously attracted to a man over 60.
True. Those girls are probably just doing their jobs.
But I'm shocked that he's been going to the same club every week for over 20 years. I wish he'd spent that passion and time on his family.
Dad's probably captivated by younger women. When one leaves or gets a bit older, I bet he moves on to the next new girl. It's quite an obsession to keep that up for 20 years.
While slowly munching on a cookie, she nodded in agreement with Naomi's words. When your father first started going to those clubs, he was still young, had a good salary, and had extra money. As a regular who tipped well, he seemed to get special treatment from the staff.
Come to think of it, he got completely immersed in the sensation of being pampered and the center of attention. And when he retired and no longer had a steady paycheck, he probably got seriously worried about being able to continue giving gifts to the hostesses. He should have worked and earned if it came to that.
Taking a sip of her tea, she seemed to be reminiscing. He lied about sending money to his mother and kept using the savings we'd built up together. And the worst part is, he even tried to use the money I had saved up. I can't believe it.
Some of my friends work in those clubs, and from their stories, most customers just see it as a game. Customers who get seriously involved, like Dad, are seen as a bit of a nuisance by the establishment.
I completely agreed with that sentiment.
The clubs don't want customers like that to face financial hardship. We need to make sure he pays back what he squandered on those girls.
Thinking about the difficult situation Steve would have to face, it weighed heavy on our hearts. We probably won't see Steve in that club he frequented for 20 long years anymore. When explaining the situation to the manager, it was feared that Steve might cause the same kind of commotion again in the future. For this reason, wanting to avoid any further trouble in the store, they refused Steve, who came for his last payment. Steve, after repeatedly knocking on the store's door and trying to enter multiple times, became so persistent that the store was at its wit's end, eventually leading them to call the police. When the police arrived, the officer looked at Steve and exclaimed, "You again." Steve, realizing that his financial life was on the brink of collapse, reached out to a former subordinate from his old company, seeking employment, and ultimately decided to start working again. The compensation for me was set at $20,000, and the $100,000 from the joint savings that Steve had spent would be transferred to my bank account on a monthly basis. The amount of the repayment is immense, but I sincerely hope that Steve will work hard to fulfill his obligation. After I completely cut off contact with Steve, he began to reach out to our daughter, Naomi. Not only did he send daily complaints to Naomi, but he also sent messages asking for financial assistance. This led Naomi to finally decide to block his contacts. Shockingly, Steve even demanded money from his own mother, my mother-in-law. She scolded him severely for his actions and reportedly told him they were now estranged. Steve's actions seemed to have naturally brought upon him the consequences. Having cut ties with him because he neglected his family and constantly lied, I now feel truly liberated. Even though I am busy with my part-time job every day, the sense of accomplishment and fulfillment I feel is significant. Especially on weekends and holidays, Naomi often brings her lovely daughter to my house, which is a source of healing for me. During longer breaks, like consecutive holidays, even my grandson takes time off and we all spend it together. Unfortunately, Naomi couldn't build a good relationship with her father, Steve, but the man she chose as her husband is truly kind and gentle, always caring for her. Their daughter genuinely loves her father, and seeing them together warms my heart. In the remaining years of my life, I sincerely want to watch over the happy daily life of my daughter and her family with warmth.
I warned you to avoid causing trouble. Quit interfering with others' time by performing pointless things. Why don't you start performing your duties in the sales department correctly before you go lecturing people from other departments? We find it obnoxious when you pretend like you're the new guy all the time. I refrained from expressing my feelings to my supervisor, who appeared clearly irritated. And then, what do you know? I have no problem terminating you. As if it were a smart idea, she said, "It doesn't matter whether you're here or not." I thought I was at my breaking point. Andrew is my name. I worked at a food processing company after I graduated from college. When my father became ill, I went back to my hometown. Fortunately, he is no longer in the hospital. But following his health problem, my dad was uncomfortable leaving my mom alone herself at home. "Andrew, would you consider coming back here?" He asked me during a visit while he was in the hospital. I therefore quit my work and accepted a position at a nearby baby supply store. Although it was difficult to find a solid position for a mid-career hiring, I would have chosen a job that utilized my prior work expertise. I therefore accepted a position with this growing company. However, there were undoubtedly difficulties involved with switching to a different industry. How many times is this, Andrew? The third time. I guess it's the fifth. When are you going to remember? The section manager is the woman who is showing me the documents, her expression displaying complete disbelief. At your prior job, you used computers, right? Why are you unable to recall? Simply put, the formats are different. No justifications. Go ahead and do it. This file is located right here. She yelled, "Yes, I have more important things to do than watch you." She kept helping, but I felt sad for her because I was having trouble with unfamiliar paperwork. I worked in the quality control department on site at my prior employment, so I rarely had to create paperwork and didn't handle many of them. To be honest, I'm clueless when they ask me to prepare a document, even though my college qualification helped me gain a job in sales administration at my current employer. It was suddenly catching up to me after I had been cruising by on templates alone. Man, maybe sales just isn't for me. It let me understand how ideal my previous position was for me. In addition, I had a girlfriend at the time. At the same company, she worked diligently at the office and frequently took over for me. However, I ended up ending our relationship because I lacked the confidence to ask her, a city girl, to come to the country with me. I miss the lunches she used to pack for me, especially since I'm a bit picky with food. All the women I've dated before didn't like cooking for me, but she always struggled and made meals for me. I didn't want to inconvenience her, a woman who wholeheartedly devoted herself to me. Despite being the one to end things, I still have feelings for her. I returned to my hometown after we split up, but things haven't been great. I contemplate quitting my job almost daily, but since I haven't been at this company for long, it might impact my job hunting prospects. So, for now, I'm just observing how things go. It's pretty much an escape from reality. While I'm discontented with my current situation and anxious about the future, I can't take the next step forward. One day, someone from the planning department brought up a collaboration project with a major food company. Our company is fairly large in the baby product business, and our mascot character is quite popular among customers. While we do well with apparel and toys, our own food brand wasn't selling too well. They wanted to put more focus on the food division, and this idea came up to stimulate interest and generate buzz. From the looks of my colleagues, it seemed the other company wasn't too enthusiastic about the collaboration. After many meetings, we finally found a company willing to partner with us. A meeting was scheduled at our office with their sales representative and our manager. This is a busy day, so don't cause any problems. No unnecessary questions either. My manager warned me in the morning. After finishing some tasks, I headed to the vending machines. On my way, I bumped into a representative from the other company coming out of the conference room. "You're Andrew, right? Don't you remember? We worked together before." "Oh, Tony. Jess, I didn't expect to see you here. Did you leave your previous job? Are you now at the food division here?" He bombarded me with questions. "No, I'm currently in sales," I replied. "Oh," Tony mumbled almost to himself. "That explains it. That explains it. What's that supposed to mean?" I was about to ask him when my cell phone rang. It was a call from my manager. Sorry. Please, go on without minding me." "I'll visit again," said Tony, and he left while my phone continued to ring. I answered it. The first thing I heard was, "You're late. Where are you?" "At the vending." "Come back right now," my manager said, abruptly ending the call. I returned to my department to see a flurry of activity. One of my colleagues who had been in a meeting told me, the sample we presented as a product image wasn't well received by the client. We need a new one by the week after next. Our department and planning are all hands on deck for overtime. You're free, right? The manager added, "Let Andrew handle the menial tasks." She handed me some documents to copy and went back to her tasks. Menial tasks, huh? Looking around, while the feedback seemed negative, everyone had a determined spirit, thinking we still had a chance next time. I felt isolated from the group. I may be a burden, but I want to help in some way. That's what I thought, so I pulled out a notebook where I'd written some half-finished notes and decided to continue writing in it. It was a small thing, but consistency appeared to be key. By reviewing repeatedly, I reduced my mistakes. When I finally had some free time, Mike from the planning department gave me some leftover baby food samples. "I'm confident about this one," he said, and I eagerly tasted the carrot puree. Instantly, I blurted out, "This is awful." Unintentionally, I continued, "Well, it's baby food. It's not supposed to taste that great to adults," someone chuckled. "No, this is really not good. It's bitter, and although I can taste the carrot, the broth flavor is overpowering. It's not that different from homemade, so why would parents buy this to feed their kids?" I pointed out. While I was just trying to be honest, it seemed that I had overstepped, given I wasn't directly involved in the project. "But Andrew, you worked in a food company before, right? You've never dealt with baby food, though." "Not sure your input is really needed here," they retorted. I was about to respond when my manager, who seemed to have overheard the conversation, stopped me. She later told me, "I thought I asked you not to cause any trouble. Maybe you don't get it since you joined mid-career, but this is a crucial time for the company. Stop meddling and disrupting everyone's flow. Before you go lecturing people from other departments, do your job in sales properly. It's problematic if you keep acting like a newbie. Honestly, I wouldn't mind if you were let go. It wouldn't make a difference with or without you." Frustrated by her blatant statement, I felt I had reached my limit. "Understood. It was a short time, but thank you," I replied, bowing to my manager and going back to my desk to finish up. Even though my contribution might not have seemed significant, the notebook I had been diligently jotting work procedures in felt pointless now. I ripped it up and left the company. On my way home, I called someone. "Hey, it's me." A few days after being fired, I received a call from my manager on my cell phone. What does she want now? I thought, feeling annoyed. I considered ignoring it, but the person I was with encouraged me to answer. "Hello, Andrew, can you talk right now? My manager's voice lacked its usual energy. Assuming we wouldn't have much to chat about, I replied, "Sure, go ahead, thanks. I'm sorry for what I said the other day. We didn't know you well enough, and both Mike and I shouldn't have said those things. We were just in a meeting with a client and the planning team. They had apparently presented the carrot paste I had severely criticized as a sample in the meeting. Then Tony said something very similar to what I had mentioned. Do you genuinely think this tastes good? It has a strong bitter taste, and the broth flavor overpowers the carrot. No matter how good the ingredients are, you can't expect repeat customers. This is a joint business app after all. We need you to think of a product that will sell more. And there's a guy named Andrew in sales you should consider involving. He used to work for our rival company and was in their quality control department. He's what's called a super taster, someone with more taste buds than average. He's not only gifted in taste, but can also accurately recall and compare flavors. I strongly suggest involving him in this project. They decided to continue the meeting next time with me in attendance. Apparently, it wasn't the right mood to say, "Andrew was just fired a few days ago." My manager continued, please come back. Without you, they won't agree to the main contract. You know our sales projection for this project, right? Food and merchandise combined, it's $5 million. The CEO even said if this project fails, we withdraw from baby food production. So please. Ignoring her plea, I responded, I told you it's none of my business anymore since I've been fired. I wanted to thank you, manager, for giving me the chance to step away from such a narrow-minded workplace where we couldn't even exchange opinions between departments. Thanks to you, I've come to terms with my feelings. Good luck with the project. I hung up while she was still talking on the other end. Is everything okay now? Megan asked while driving. The day I was fired, on an impulse, I had called my ex-girlfriend, Megan. I had reached my limit and just wanted to hear her voice in that moment. The word patience did not exist in my vocabulary. Andrew, hearing Megan's voice for the first time in months, I felt deflated. Megan, I'm going to ask you something really selfish. Please, let's get back together. After a long silence, she responded, if you let me slap you twice, counting the one from when we broke up, then sure. Thanks to that, my face was swollen today. Looking at my reflection in the car mirror, I asked, do you think it's okay to greet people with this face? Just as the car stopped at a red light, she said, considering it's our old place, you look so handsome that they might even feel sympathetic. It's just perfect. Megan, pouting like a child, has always been my savior, forgiving me no matter how much I hurt her. Apparently, word got out that Andrew was fired. Megan had told my previous company, and the HR manager contacted me right away, asking, would you like to come back? My replacement hadn't been decided yet, and the remaining team was struggling, torn between decisions. My mother said, it's nice to know your dad and you are happy, but it's important to do what you love. I hope you do what you won't regret. With her words, I decided to rejoin. Still, I feel uneasy about living away from my parents, so I think I'll consult with them when buying a house. I need to earn a lot for that. Welcome back. Isn't it too soon? My colleague Ken joked, but I, donning my pristine work uniform, felt it fit perfectly and replied, no, I think I realized it too late. That previous project did end up getting canceled, and the company withdrew from baby food production. Meanwhile, my company ventured into baby food production. I attended the product development meetings as a representative of the quality control department. The environment in which opinions can be exchanged regardless of faction is a meaningful one. The products that have been launched have been well received by consumers and are selling well, and there is already talk of increasing the variety of flavors and forms to suit different uses, such as travel-sized products. Watching children enjoy the food, I feel fulfilled. There are many foods I don't like, but I want everyone to taste something even I find delicious. Just realizing this made those few months' experiences invaluable to me. In fact, I was dismissed from the meeting about 3 minutes after it began. They claimed that I was incompetent and hence out of place. What did you just say? My voice rose in incredulity as I couldn't contain my shock at such a ridiculous statement. My face was flushed with rage as I heard the specifics of their conversation. I hastily took out my phone and dialed a specific number after she had finished telling me what had happened. Hi there. I appreciate your time. I'm sorry to have interrupted, but I'll get right to the point. The $70 million contract is being canceled. I said it bluntly and ended the call without waiting for a reply. Every fiber in my body was fueled by the rage that erupted from my subordinate being humiliated. John is my name. I work for Clean Industries in the sales division, and I'm 36 years old. I have a hectic life, from negotiating with clients to working at my desk. Having worked for the company for more than 10 years, I now also teach new hires, with an emphasis on nurturing younger talent. I went over the reference materials because I was tasked with mentoring one of our staff members this year. Emma is her name. She is really beautiful, with warm, expressive eyes and straight black hair. She exudes an atmosphere that makes others stop and think twice, almost like she's an actress or famous person. But her looks wasn't the only factor in her hiring. Despite just being in her 3rd year, she has already showed promise with her novel perspectives and useful suggestions. She struggles to speak up, though, because she is a little reticent, which is a minor disadvantage. To help her develop and gain confidence via experience, she has been placed under a mid-level employee like me. Emma once asked me for advice a few days prior to a meeting with Morgan Manufacturing, one of our biggest clients. I find myself questioning whether a young person like me should be managing such a significant client. Someone with greater expertise, like you, John, ought to be in command, in my opinion. Morgan Manufacturing is well known in our sector, despite not being a household name. Emma's concern was understandable, but in my opinion, it was time for her to take on bigger clients. Don't be concerned. If something comes up, I'll be there to help. You have a tendency to undervalue yourself, yet you were trusted with this task because of your abilities, so have some faith in yourself. John, if you say so, I'll try my hardest. Could you accompany me in reviewing the materials? Emma looked up at me and smiled shyly as she talked. I smiled back and nodded, then started going over the papers Emma had brought. As scheduled, Emma went to Morgan Manufacturing with her colleague and predecessor, Sam, on the day of the meeting. Andrew, the client representative, is renowned for his kind manner and friendly disposition. I was sure Emma could perform without being overly anxious because Andrew was her counterpart. After giving things some thought, I returned to my desk's routine tasks. However, I heard a familiar voice behind me as I took a quick look at the first document. Excuse me. I messed up. What happened, Emma? Have you forgotten anything? Emma, who ought to have been at the client meeting, was standing in front of my desk looking sad. A few seconds after the meeting was supposed to begin, I checked the time out of habit. Emma only chewed her lip as I watched, perplexed and anxious, wondering if she had forgotten something or was feeling ill. Her face was hazy with sorrow. The mood was oppressive, and I braced myself, knowing that something unexpected had obviously happened. Can you tell me what happened? Emma gave me a confused, nearly defenseless look. She hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice unsure and sluggish. I was actually dismissed from the meeting 3 minutes after it began. They claimed that I was incompetent and hence out of place. What did you just say? My voice rose in surprise at such a startling revelation, and I was unable to contain it. My cheeks was flushed with rage as I listened to the in-depth details of the conversation with the client. I tried to control my roiling anger by taking several deep breaths when she was done. The rage of being insulted without even being given a chance to reply, however, still pulsated through me like a roaring magma river. It was my fault, really. John, please, it's okay. No way, Emma, you did nothing wrong. I reassured her by nodding, but all it did was make her paler, her terrified eyes staring at me. But, your face. I took a drink of coffee, wondering what she was talking about, and suddenly I understood. I looked like some sort of devil, my face reflected on the coffee's surface, teeth clenched, eyes wide with rage. I turned my back on Emma and inhaled deeply. I knew it wouldn't help her if I acted out of anger, because I was her boss. By the time I lifted my coffee cup again, my reflection had returned to its usual calm expression. After finishing my coffee, I immediately pulled out my phone and dialed a certain number. After a few rings, I heard the faint click of the call connecting. Hello. Thank you for taking the call. I'll get straight to the point. We're canceling the $70 million contract. Without waiting for a response, I hung up. Then, feeling calm, I made my way leisurely to the break room for another coffee. Suddenly, I heard Emma jogging to catch up behind me. John, what was that call about? Did you say $70 million? Who were you talking to? Oh, I called Mr. Morgan, the president of Morgan Manufacturing. I decided we can't trust him with a $70 million contract anymore. Hearing this, Emma went pale, her breath catching. It was understandable. Morgan Manufacturing is one of our largest clients. Canceling a deal that big must seem unimaginable to her. Seeing the worry and confusion spreading across her face, I realized she wouldn't be able to focus on work without a full explanation, so I reluctantly began explaining everything. After I shared a bit about my position, Emma's eyes widened even more. She covered her mouth with her hands as though suppressing a scream. I couldn't blame her. It was a lot to take in. But her curiosity soon replaced the earlier fear and guilt, her eyes bright with interest. It seemed she'd stopped blaming herself, which was a relief. I relaxed as I recalled the incident she had described. Emma said everything started off smoothly, with friendly greetings as planned. Her predecessor, Sam, introduced her to the client representative, Andrew. True to his reputation, Andrew was a polite man who made an effort to put Emma at ease, helping her to relax for the meeting. This deal is truly exciting. Our president, Mr. Morgan, is very enthusiastic about it and looks forward to further discussions with you, Emma. We're equally honored to have this connection with your company and look forward to working together. Emma and Sam both bowed deeply. Just as they were about to begin the main discussion, the conference room doors suddenly swung open. As Emma and the others turned their surprised gazes toward it, they saw a man in his 40s standing there, arms crossed, and wearing a smug, unpleasant grin. Without knocking, the man barged into the room, leaving Emma confused. Sam and Andrew looked equally stunned. Is something the matter, Thomas? What's with the rookie? The man called Thomas ignored the question and instead began scrutinizing Emma from head to toe. Judging by the manager title on his badge and the way Andrew responded to him, it was clear Thomas was in a higher position. Emma stood there, shocked that someone with such a rude attitude could be a manager. Thomas started speaking unilaterally. I heard today's meeting was with some tiny local factory. How short-staffed must they be, sending a rookie like her to handle a company of our scale? Are they mocking us? No, actually these representatives err. Andrew tried to explain, but Thomas waved his hand dismissively, silencing him. Then he plopped into the chair across from Emma. Without hesitation, he grabbed the materials Emma had prepared and began flipping through them with a look of disdain. Emma and Sam exchanged glances. Their company was no small local factory, but a reputable industrial firm, hardly deserving of such a label. Even if they were a small operation, there was no reason to be looked down upon. After all, whether big or small, companies in manufacturing share the same commitment to craftsmanship. Small factories can tackle projects that big corporations might not manage, so there's no reason for either to act superior. Feeling an undercurrent of discomfort, Emma thought it best to resolve the situation calmly. She assumed there had been some misunderstanding and began, "Excuse me, but..." But before she could finish, the real trouble began. How could anyone expect a real deal with some local factory girl? "Incompetents are out of place here," Thomas sneered. As he finished saying this, the sharp sound of tearing paper filled the room. To her shock, Thomas had ripped up the materials and business card Emma had prepared. In the silence that followed, fragments of the torn contract floated to the floor, scattered in shreds across the carpet. Andrew stared in disbelief, his mouth hanging open as he glanced between Thomas and the shredded papers. Emma and Sam were equally shaken, their gaze fixed on Thomas, who seemed oblivious to the shock around him. Instead, he crossed his arms with a smug expression and looked at Emma with a self-satisfied smirk as she stood there, pale and paralyzed. "Thomas, these aren't the people you think. The meeting with the local factory is tomorrow. These representatives are from Clean Industries." "What? Clean Industries? You mean that well-known manufacturing company?" At the mention of the company's name, Thomas stiffened, his face twisting with embarrassment. But he quickly regained his arrogant posture, pointing his chin dismissively toward Emma. "In that case, it's even more insulting. Surely there were better people they could have sent. Sending someone this young is an insult." With that, he practically shoved Emma out of the conference room, abruptly ending the meeting. Barging into a meeting uninvited and mistaking us for a different client is just unacceptable. Furthermore, dismissing Emma solely because of her youth and gender, assuming she's not worth speaking to, is simply out of line. Thomas would certainly face consequences for this behavior. With that thought in mind, I took a sip of my freshly brewed coffee. The situation shifted within just an hour. I was informed that 2 representatives from Morgan Manufacturing had arrived, and I stood up, anticipating their visit. Summoning Emma, we slowly made our way to the reception room where Mr. Morgan, the president of Morgan Manufacturing, was waiting with a pale face. A man in his 40s, standing next to him with a disgruntled, sulky expression, reluctantly bowed his head to me. This man was probably Thomas. Despite reaching a managerial position in his 40s, a sign of considerable ability, there was no sense of vigor in Thomas's demeanor. In fact, his entire attitude exuded irritation, as if he couldn't fathom why he should apologize. But Mr. Morgan ignored Thomas's behavior entirely, bowing repeatedly as soon as he saw me. "I deeply apologize for my subordinate's rudeness today. We are sincerely sorry." "Please, raise your head," I urged, but he wouldn't listen, saying, "I cannot possibly raise my head. I must apologize for our mismanagement." Thomas appeared thoroughly confused by the sight of his company's president apologizing so fervently, his brow furrowing in bewilderment. "As much as you say that, isn't your apology misdirected? With this misunderstanding still unaddressed, we're getting nowhere." At my firm response, Mr. Morgan, now pale, finally raised his head, looking at me with a nervous expression. He awaited my next words. "To confirm, the reason for your visit today is due to the incident earlier, correct?" As I asked this, Thomas's eyebrow twitched. Ignoring the simmering glare he directed at me, I continued speaking. "So you're Thomas. Have you explained what happened earlier to Mr. Morgan?" At my question, Thomas scowled, clearly annoyed, and instead shot back with a question of his own. Who exactly are you anyway? I'm being dragged here by Mr. Morgan, and it's honestly a bit inconvenient." "Thomas, just what do you think you're saying?" Mr. Morgan immediately started to reprimand Thomas, visibly flustered. But Thomas only pouted and continued to glare at me. "I'll explain who I am later. For now, can you answer my question?" When I pressed him again, Thomas reluctantly began to speak. "Well, I already told Mr. Morgan it was just a small misunderstanding on my part. Honestly, it's your employee who left abruptly. If anything, I'd like to know what happened on your end, he muttered, scratching his head and muttering under his breath. What a hassle. It was clear he was trying to dodge responsibility for his actions, perhaps thinking he could get away with it. Though his attitude infuriated me, I held my temper and continued. Then allow me to go over the details myself. With that, I recounted the events as Emma had described them, this time in front of Mr. Morgan. Just as planned, we were having our meeting when Thomas suddenly barged in without so much as a proper greeting. He tore up the materials and business card Emma had prepared. I described how he mistook our company for a small-town factory and repeatedly made derogatory remarks about such companies. As I went on, Mr. Morgan's face flushed with anger. Yet even after hearing all this, Thomas remained unperturbed, casually remarking, "Oh, that's all." "Really?" Followed by a small click of his tongue. It was simply a bit of a misunderstanding, a difference in perspective, if you will. I reviewed the materials, and because they were prepared by a young employee with only a few years of experience, they were honestly quite lacking. He said, glancing at Emma with a condescending smile. So I pointed that out and, doing her a favor, tore them up so she could redo them from scratch. But she ran off crying. Really, it seems she's a bit immature as a professional. Even now, Thomas was twisting the story to suit his narrative. At this point, I was beyond anger, feeling more disbelief at his refusal to admit his wrongdoing. But this was no time to let up on holding him accountable. So that's your version of events, is it? It's not a version, it's the truth. Clearly, that employee over there just spun her story to suit herself. Thomas looked around the room with a smug grin. I kept my gaze fixed on him, who maintained a smug, confident demeanor, assuming there was no evidence. Without looking away, I called out to Emma. "Emma, let's clarify exactly what happened. Could you bring that out?" Emma nodded quietly and placed a voice recorder on the table. Thomas looked shocked at the unexpected appearance of the recorder, exclaiming, "What? What is that? Don't tell me you were recording this meeting. That's a violation of privacy." "You might not have known, Thomas, since you joined midway through the meeting, but recording was pre-approved," I replied calmly. Thomas finally seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation, clenching his teeth in frustration. "If what you said matched Emma's account, we wouldn't have needed to bring this out. But it seems your story doesn't quite line up with the report I received." "That? I mean, surely there's no need to actually listen to it," Thomas stammered, sweating visibly. He offered a weak protest, but I pressed the play button on the recorder without hesitation. I thought it best for Mr. Morgan to hear the content as well, for clarity. Thomas's mouth opened and closed as he struggled to form words, utterly speechless. Meanwhile, the voice recorder began to faithfully replay the earlier exchange. In just those brief 3 minutes, a stream of insults from Thomas played back, leaving Mr. Morgan visibly trembling with anger, too furious to even speak. Although Emma had given me a summary, hearing the sound of the contract being torn filled me with a fresh surge of anger. Thomas, seeing Mr. Morgan's reaction, finally dropped his head in defeat. "I deeply apologize for my conduct, but as you can hear in the recording, it was just an honest mistake." "A mistake, you say?" Thomas gave a forced smile, trying to gauge my reaction. "It was just a minor communication error. I mixed up this company with a small-town factory scheduled for the next day." The once confident Thomas, who had been so condescending earlier, now looked back and forth between Mr. Morgan and me, bowing repeatedly, his tone entirely submissive. Thomas's overly submissive performance was almost comical, and I found myself shaking my head. "Thomas, you may say that, but calling it a mistake isn't enough to justify what we've endured," I said. "I'm sorry." His apology was cut off by my unyielding smile, and frustration quickly crept across his face. "Even after I apologized, you're still pushing this? Who do you think you were to speak to me like that?" Thomas, ignoring Mr. Morgan's near-desperate reprimand, grew even more obstinate. Mr. Morgan, this is what happens when you keep apologizing. They take advantage. Cancel a $70 million contract. Who gives some employee like him that kind of authority? Because I have full authority over that contract, granted by my father, President Kingston. At this revelation, Thomas's mouth fell open, his eyes wide with surprise. It was clear he hadn't considered that I might be more than just a regular employee. What? Neither your representatives nor that woman said anything about that. If I'd known, I wouldn't have acted like that, I swear. Of course I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want special treatment just because I'm the president's son. Thomas's strength seemed to abandon him, and he collapsed onto the sofa, mumbling feebly, "Please, I truly didn't know. I'll never act that way again. So just this once." He muttered those words almost like delirious rambling. Ignoring the shock on Thomas's face, I turned my gaze toward Emma with a determined expression. She gave me a deep nod and stepped forward. Our distrust of Thomas stems not only from how he treated me, but from his entire attitude. Thinking it's acceptable to treat our company with respect simply because of our status while dismissing a smaller company is a serious problem in itself. Emma's words perfectly echoed my own feelings. Emma had always been modest and lacked confidence in herself, but now she was boldly expressing her opinions to Thomas. Her shoulders trembled slightly, but she finished her statement unwaveringly. I nodded to Emma a few times, conveying my appreciation for her hard work. Then, standing directly in front of Thomas, I looked down at him intently. Realizing the gravity of his actions, he turned pale, his knees trembling. "So, we will proceed with canceling the $70 million contract." No. My words seemed to crush Thomas, his expression that of a man facing judgment. Beside him, Mr. Morgan held his head in his hands, glaring at Thomas. Finally, Mr. Morgan spoke, his voice sharp with anger. "I've covered for you countless times, but enough is enough." Mr. Morgan's usual calm demeanor had vanished, his fury unmistakable. Just seeing this made it easy to imagine how much trouble Thomas had caused over the years. Every employee here understands the extent to which our company owes Clean Industries and, by extension, Mr. Kingston. I don't know or care about that. You're all making such a big deal over torn documents. Can't you just print new copies? Cornered, Thomas now turned his frustration toward us. Yes, I may have behaved poorly earlier, and for that, I apologize. I'm sorry, all right. I'd assure you I've learned my lesson. Though he used the words of an apology, his tone was petulant, as if he were a teenager. He exaggeratedly bowed, then looked back at Emma and me with a smug, self-satisfied grin. His arrogance left no doubt that he wasn't truly sorry. "I have no interest in accepting such a shallow apology," I said. "Jan is absolutely right," Mr. Morgan agreed. Putting Thomas in a position of responsibility simply because he's related to the founder was a mistake. Almost as if he couldn't stand to look at him anymore, Mr. Morgan covered his face with his hands. It was clear Thomas had been brought in through a connection that Mr. Morgan couldn't refuse. While nepotism alone isn't always wrong, a person like Thomas shouldn't be leading anyone. Mr. Morgan turned back to us, bowing deeply once again. "I truly apologize for everything that's happened. Rest assured, Thomas will face appropriate disciplinary action." Next to Mr. Morgan, who was repeatedly apologizing, Thomas stood with his eyes wide open in shock. Having always used his family ties to his advantage, it was clear he'd never considered that he might one day face real consequences for his actions. Thomas sat there, eyes blinking rapidly, utterly speechless. Meanwhile, Mr. Morgan bowed deeply once again, his expression strained. "On top of everything, it may be selfish of me to ask, but could you reconsider the contract? Please, just one more chance for our company." His earnest apology made my heart ache. I held no hard feelings toward Mr. Morgan personally. In fact, his dedication to treating his employees with respect and warmth, almost like family, was close to the ideal of what I thought a leader should be. That was why I had proposed the $70 million contract with Morgan Manufacturing. Their work and reputation were impeccable. The problem lay solely with Thomas. And Thomas, oblivious to the gravity of his actions, simply muttered to himself, "A punishment. Me? Why should I be the one to suffer here?" Seeing his self-centered behavior, I couldn't help but sigh. Mr. Morgan had been sincerely apologizing for the situation, but Thomas was the root cause here. Thomas flinched, looking up at me with a fearful expression. His concern was solely for his own status and security. With a calm but firm tone, I continued, "Thomas, do you only apologize when forced? I have no interest in maintaining any relationship with a company that employs someone like that." Beside me, Emma nodded repeatedly. As a dedicated and hard-working individual, she couldn't stand someone like Thomas, who had recklessly interfered with her work and nearly ruined a significant contract. Seeing even young Emma looking at Thomas with such disdain seemed to solidify Mr. Morgan's decision. After a brief, pained expression crossed his face, he shook his head as if clearing his mind. Then, with a firm voice, he spoke to Thomas. "Your actions have severely damaged our company's reputation. Be prepared to take full responsibility for this." "What? A punishment? You mean a demotion? Or, I won't be fired, will I?" Finally grasping the severity of the situation, Thomas's face paled with worry. It was clear that until now, Mr. Morgan or other influential people had managed to smooth things over whenever he caused problems. But now, seeing the severity in Mr. Morgan's face, he seemed to grasp the reality for the first time. Thomas abandoned his arrogant demeanor and dropped to the floor in a deep bow. Only now, under threat, did he finally choose to apologize. "I sincerely apologize. I truly regret my actions." His tone sounded genuine for once, but it only filled me with disappointment. Why hadn't he shown this remorse from the beginning? No, if he were the type to apologize, he wouldn't have shown such rude behavior in the first place. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for a moment, and steadied myself. Then, calm and collected, I delivered my final decision to Mr. Morgan and Thomas. "I hear your apology, but it doesn't change the fact that Emma was dismissed from the meeting partway through. I can't, in good conscience, continue this partnership as things stand." Immediately, both Mr. Morgan and Thomas slumped in defeat, looking more like they had collapsed onto the floor than bowed. Addressing them, I continued with a gentle but resolute tone, "Regardless, I'll inform my father of everything that's happened here. Please await his response. No, please, I beg you, don't cancel the contract. If word gets out that I cost the company $70 million, I'll be fired." Together with Emma, who had been quietly observing the situation, I left the meeting room. Up until the moment the door closed, Thomas's pitiful shouts echoed through the quiet office. Afterward, I took Emma with me to personally report the situation to my father. Though initially nervous about meeting him, she soon launched into a clear and confident explanation, outlining everything that had transpired. It was obvious that this experience had instilled in her a sense of responsibility and perspective on professional relationships. Emma's rapid growth was perhaps the only positive outcome from this ordeal. After that, my father arranged a discussion with Mr. Morgan, and they decided to move forward with a conditional contract. The agreed-upon condition was that no more misguided employees like Thomas would ever be assigned as representatives in the future. Though I thought it was a rather lenient resolution, Mr. Morgan chose to go a step further. He terminated Thomas on the spot. It seemed that following the incident, investigations uncovered a long history of Thomas's misconduct. Mr. Morgan had only been aware of a fraction of the problems. It turned out Thomas had driven talented young employees to quit and offended clients with unprofessional behavior, leading to lost contracts. It was clear now that some of our struggles were directly tied to Thomas's actions. He had even driven away some of our most promising talent and damaged our standing with valuable clients. After a long time, I met with Mr. Morgan, who let out a tired sigh before bowing his head to me. Because of everything, I caused you a lot of trouble this time, John. Despite that, you still went through with the $70 million contract, and I truly can't thank you enough. If our company were to withdraw, Morgan Manufacturing would likely face significant losses. At worst, they could even face the threat of bankruptcy. It was clear they would be even more reliant on us moving forward. But I shook my head slowly and extended my hand to Mr. Morgan. We all need support at some point. I have deep respect for you, Mr. Morgan. You never stopped putting your employees first. Thank you, John. Truly, thank you. With tears in his eyes, Mr. Morgan, who was old enough to be my father, clutched my hand. He had made the mistake of supporting someone like Thomas, but everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do once you realize them. We shook hands firmly, committing ourselves to the success of our future dealings. As for Thomas, life was rough for him after his dismissal. Due to his poor character, he had been shuffled around related companies before, but this time he was completely cut off. Even his family disowned him, severing all ties. For years, he had relied on others to clean up his messes, but with no support left, he scrambled to find a new job only to be rejected everywhere. By then, he had never actually put in honest work and had developed a reputation for his attitude and behavior. He burned through his savings in no time, put his house up as collateral, and eventually disappeared. The last I heard, there were rumors he was seen scavenging in trash bins in a rundown neighborhood, but there's been no word of him since. As for me, I continued my work without interruption. I was wrapping up a rotation through various departments in preparation for becoming the next president, with my current role in sales being my final stop. Starting next year, I was told I'd be working closer to my father as vice president. One day, I called Emma into my office. I need a capable and trustworthy assistant by my side. How about it? Would you work with me? Yes, I will do everything in my power to support you. Emma firmly nodded at my proposal. Gone was the hesitant young employee who once wavered in the face of responsibility. With her talent combined with newfound confidence, she'd be unstoppable. I'm certain she'll become a vital asset to our company's future. With that hope in my heart, I stepped into the office once more. Supporting each other not only in the workplace, but also in life was still a few years away for Emma and me. This is not a place for you. The CEO's wife's voice reverberated through the still workplace. Ha ha, you're fired. The CEO, who was standing close by, then snorted and remarked, That's right. Ha ha, you're fired. I had had enough of the CEO and his wife's constant patronizing behavior toward me. They had no justification for treating me that way, but later on, they would come to regret what they had done. John is my name. My age is 25. I was hired by Sakaki Corporation, a components manufacturing close to my parents' house, when I graduated from high school. Sakaki Corporation is a small business run by a family. My parents' house is only a short walk away, and the money is decent. I choose to work for this company for that reason. But from the beginning, my mother didn't want me to work for Sakaki Corporation. The explanation is that my mom knew the president's family well because she and the company's president were classmates in elementary school. Will you actually be joining Sakaki Corporation? My mother often encouraged me to reconsider joining, saying, It's not too late to change your mind. Nevertheless, in spite of her protests, I chose to join Sakaki Corporation. She was quite opposed to me joining Sakaki Corporation, and I didn't understand why until I started working there. I arrived at work with excitement on my first day. I had no notion that this was the start of misery at the time, but I was really looking forward to what my life as a working adult would be like. The president's wife was waiting as I walked into the factory, and she gave me a disdainful look. 30 minutes before work begins, new hires must arrive at the factory. High school graduates know it, don't they? It's only common sense. No, I was unaware of that. But did she really need to point out that I had graduated from high school? It's brutal. I bowed profoundly to the president's wife and said, "I'm so sorry. I'll be more careful from now on." Then, behind me, I heard a man's voice. I turned around out of instinct. He was a tall, thin man whose visage was remarkably like that of the president's wife. "Hey, are you the lowly educated new guy?" Haggling. I had run out of things to say. Even though I barely completed high school, I don't need to openly declare that I have little education. The president's wife then introduced me to him without anyone asking. "This is my son, Matt. He is the manager of the factory. He is smart and attended college, unlike you." Matt, who appears to be 25 years old, joined the organization following his graduation from a private institution. In order to become president in the future, he is now gaining experience as the plant manager. With a smug expression on his face, Matt continued, "Having a high school grad in our factory, that's unfortunate," in a loud voice that I could hear. I felt wrath welling up in my chest. There was a reason I didn't attend college, but it was unacceptable to be viewed as uneducated by Matt and the president's wife, who were unaware of it. I was my family's eldest son at birth. My father was the more loving of my parents, and he frequently taught me how to assemble model kits. I loved my father dearly. Years later, my long-awaited younger brother was born, and it was the happiest time of my life. But my father passed away from illness just as I had started elementary school. Because of that, my mother raised my baby brother and me all by herself. She worked tirelessly for us brothers, sparing no time for rest. However, we were always tight on money to the point where there were months we couldn't afford to pay for school lunches. I couldn't possibly tell my mother, who struggled so much, that I wanted to go to college. I believe that if you have the will, you can study any time, even without going to college. That's why I decided to start working right after high school. Well, it can't be helped. Matt can take good care of this high school grad. The president's wife referred to her son as Matt. Being addressed like this by his mother at the age of 25 felt a bit weird to me. Reluctantly, Matt taught me the job. I took notes on each task as I learned them. Then the president showed up. Secretly, I had hoped that the president would be a good person who doesn't judge others by their educational background, but my hopes would soon be dashed. The president was watching my work. "You were a high school grad, right?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied. "Yes, that's correct. Considering nobody else wants a high school grad, you should be grateful I hired you." I looked at the president's face in disbelief. Unwanted by anyone. Hired as a favor. What a harsh way to be spoken about. Indeed, this family is no good. Did my mom know this family was rotten, and that's why she opposed it? For the first time, I understood why my mom had been against it. After work, I was completely exhausted. When I was about to pack up and head home, the boss came up to me. "Today, we're thinking of throwing you a welcome party. You have to attend." It was my first day on the job, and I was completely worn out. However, given the situation, I decided to join. The welcome party was set to take place at a nearby tavern. With heavy steps, I walked to the tavern. Then, a girl around 20 years old called out to me from behind. "You're the new employee, John, right? I'm Amy, last year's new recruit." Amy was a girl with a cute smile and a friendly demeanor. "Yes, my name is John. Nice to meet you." "Likewise. I'm looking forward to working together." I felt like I would be sucked into Amy's beaming smile. That's how wonderful Amy's smile was. Before I knew it, while I was talking with Amy, we had arrived at the tavern. We entered the tavern. The boss's family was already there, drinking and having a good time. Then Matt, who was drinking beer, beckoned to Amy, saying, "Amy, come sit over here." Amy seemed a bit reluctant. When I quietly suggested to Amy, "Let's sit together at the end," she smiled brightly. However, as we sat at the end, Matt started raising his voice. "Everyone, I'm going to introduce this year's new employee. Come on, stand up, Matt." Matt instructed me to stand up. I stood up and looked at everyone's faces. All the employees were looking at me with interest. Then Matt introduced me with shocking words. The next moment, this guy's name is John. He's the new hire with just a high school diploma and no skills. I think he's really useless because he's just a high school grad. But don't worry, I'll cover for him if anything happens. We'll just fire him, so he might not work here that long. Lol, it was the most humiliating introduction I had ever received in my life. No one had ever called me unskilled because I only had a high school diploma, and I had never thought of myself that way. All I could do was clench my fists and hold back my anger. Gradually, my anger turned into sadness. Seeing this, Amy looked into my face and said in a low voice, "What's wrong with being a high school graduate?" I can't believe someone would say that, showing her anger. Then Matt, in a good mood from drinking, came over. "Hey, I'm the one who sits next to Amy. Move over, high school grad." Matt put his arm around Amy, who was trying to resist. "Amy is going to be my wife in the future. You, a mere high school grad, shouldn't be talking to her so casually." Matt spoke with a sense of pride, but Amy's face wasn't smiling at all. In fact, she looked puzzled. It was clear that Matt was interested in Amy, but the feeling was not mutual. That much was obvious. However, who Matt liked was of no importance to me. Exhausted and worn out, I drank a soft drink before starting to prepare to leave. I have work tomorrow, so I need to get to bed early. That's all I could think about. When I got up to leave, Amy also began to hurriedly prepare to go home. "John, I'll go home with you," Amy said and followed me. Just as we were about to open the tavern door, Matt shouted loudly, "Where do you think you're taking Amy, you high school dropout with no skills?" Amy froze in shock. "It's just a coincidence that we're leaving at the same time," I said. Matt clicked his tongue. We finally managed to leave the tavern. Both Amy and I had tired expressions. The plant manager keeps insisting on going out on a date. I've told him I'm not interested at all. I see. He does seem persistent, but I think it's better to say no if you don't like something. You know, but if I say something wrong and get fired, I won't be able to support my family. Amy started to share her personal story. She was born to a single mother and lived in a family of 4, including her mother and Amy, her little sister, and brother. Amy's mother is frail and unable to work, so Amy works instead to support the family. Despite being around my age, she's so responsible. I need to be more like Amy. Thanks to Amy, I was able to pull myself together. Amy's home was not too far from my parents' house. We talked about work as we made our way home. When I arrived home, my mom was up, waiting for me. My mom was so worried about how my job went that she couldn't sleep. I told her everything that happened today and what was said without holding anything back. Then my mom frowned. "That family really is strange. I can't forgive them for calling you incompetent, though." She then told me about the past. When she was in elementary school, the president of Sakaki Corporation was her classmate. Despite everyone else walking to school in groups, the president was picked up and dropped off in a luxury car by his parents. Apparently, his parents would show up at the slightest issue. For instance, during fights, his parents would appear and punish the other party. The president, having been spoiled, always seemed to look down on people. Therefore, it's likely that Matt's tendency to look down on others comes from his parents' influence. I oddly found myself understanding this. My mom said I could quit my job any time, but I felt that if I quit now, I would definitely regret it. So, I decided to stick it out, determined to do whatever it takes. The next day, when I showed up at work, Matt was in a particularly bad mood, probably because I went home with Amy yesterday and he didn't like it. Then the president, noticing this, glared at me. John, didn't you learn in school not to take what's not yours? Lol. This is why I dislike high school grads, the president's wife snickered through her nose. I couldn't believe my ears. I have no recollection of taking Amy away from Matt. Moreover, Amy is not Matt's property to begin with. What are these people talking about? I do intend to do my best at this job, but can I really manage? I suddenly felt very anxious. The condescending remarks and terrible attitudes from the president's family continued daily. So the days went by, and 5 years passed. I'm still working at this company. The president's family is still terrible to me, but I've managed to develop the ability to ignore it. Even when the president's family said unpleasant things, I learned to let it go in one ear and out the other, which made my job easier. In these 5 years, a few new employees, who are my juniors, have joined the company. 2 of them, like me, are high school graduates. Because of that, the president's family started looking down, not just on me, but on them too. High school grads are just a bunch of incompetents. The president's harsh words were hurting the new employees. I wanted to protect the high school graduate newcomers at all costs, but the 2 of them, who couldn't stand it anymore, both ended up leaving one after the other. It's no wonder they ended up leaving. The president's family kept making snide remarks just because they were high school graduates. And yet, they constantly complained about not having enough employees, as if it were their catchphrase. Really, whose fault is it that we're short on people? Couldn't they offer a few more kind words to the new employees? I was feeling frustrated. Then one day, the president came to the factory in a flurry. He was talking to the person in charge of designing parts. The person looked troubled and shook their head. However, the president started raising his voice. If this isn't finished, All Corporation says they can't continue doing business with us. This company is finished. Get it done by the end of this week. Otherwise, we'll lose to our rival, Brown Industries. All Corporation accounts for a large portion of Sakaki Corporation's profits. It seems we became obligated to develop a new part at the request of All Corporation. If the development doesn't go well, All Corporation will start doing significant business with our rival, Brown Industries. If that happens, our company is done for. Seeing the president clearly in a panic, I felt a sense of crisis. I approached the person in charge of part design. I had the design drawings for the part in my hand. The person in charge looked troubled. Finishing this by the end of the week is just too unreasonable, they sighed. I leaned in to look at the design drawings and then at the person in charge. Is this how the design is supposed to be? Can I try making this part? I asked, a bit excited. The person in charge looked at me with a surprised face. Their expression said it all. There's no way a high school graduate like me could make this part. I've always been good at this kind of work, but this isn't the toy, you know. I understand. Just let me try. There's no harm in trying, I said. It seemed like the person in charge was won over by my enthusiasm. They handed me the design drawings for the part. The deadline is until the time we head back from now, the supervisor said. I deeply bowed in response to their words. Amy, who was working nearby, called out to me, John, can you really do it? Amy asked, her tone curious. I smiled at her and said, Don't worry, just watch me. Still, Amy looked worried as she watched me. I was looking at the blueprints and making parts with improvements. Halfway through, Matt also started watching my work. Next to him was the CEO. There's no way a high school grad can make these parts, right? Said the CEO. Despite saying so, both of them were watching my work. I was connecting small parts together and shading them down as I worked. It's finished. Several hours later, I had completed the part. It was a splendid piece of work. The supervisor kept lifting and examining the finished part. John, this is fantastic. To be able to complete this in just a few hours is amazing. Overwhelmed with joy, the supervisor shook my hand. Even the usually sarcastic CEO was looking at me with a broad smile. This time, you're quite something for a high school grad. Keep up the good work like this. Holding the freshly made part, the COO hurried out of the factory. I felt proud of myself. No matter how difficult something may be, by taking on the challenge, sometimes you can see the light. I thought deeply. Once the CEO had left the factory, Amy gave a small clap from the corner of the factory and smiled at me. Amy has always been on my side. Being able to endure whatever the CEO's family says to me at work is also thanks to Amy's support from the shadows. I want to continue being good work colleagues with Amy. I was thinking about this while working. From this day on, I started to be involved in the development and designing of new parts. The work now is far more enjoyable than before. No matter what the CEO's family says, I find fulfillment in my work and spend my days feeling motivated. John, you've been looking really lively lately. Amy talked to me with a full smile. Whenever I see Amy smile like this, for some reason, my heart skips a beat. However, that date turned out to be the last day I could work with Amy in the factory. The next day, when I entered the workplace, Amy was nowhere to be seen. Maybe she caught a cold. I thought. It was strange, but I was sure she would come to work the next day, so I naively thought. But Amy didn't come to the company the next day, nor the day after that. Worried, I sent Amy a message during my break. Are you not coming to work because you're feeling unwell? While I was eating my lunch, I got a reply from Amy. I've been fired from the company. Reading Amy's message, I inadvertently let out a loud voice. The surrounding employees were surprised by my voice. Amy? Fired? What in the world happened? I immediately replied to Amy, You're fired. What happened? I could no longer swallow my lunch. As I put the lid on my lunchbox and started to clean up, I received another reply from Amy. Actually, the information Amy shared was shocking. I couldn't sit still any longer and ran to where Matt was. Factory manager, I need to talk to you. Matt was having an extravagant sushi delivery with the CEO and his wife. The COO and his wife looked at me with obvious disdain. You? How unpleasant. Toby interrupted during a meal. High school grads really lack manners. What the heck are you talking about? Matt raised his voice in anger. I stood my ground and loudly said, Please revoke Amy's termination. Matt looked puzzled. Why should I have to listen to something like that from you? It's none of your business. Her vital work colleague has been fired. I cannot stay silent. Could you please reconsider the termination? The CEO laughed through his nose at my earnest gaze. Why are you so desperate? Could it be that you and Amy are in that kind of relationship? No, I'm just upset that a vital work colleague was unjustly fired. I said, my voice even louder than before. In fact, Amy was fired because she had turned down a marriage proposal from Matt. They were never in a relationship in the first place, so there was no way Amy could accept such a proposal. Amy had declined in the most non-offensive way possible. But for the prideful Matt, being turned down was unacceptable. Shortly after, Amy was fired from the company. This is wrongful termination. I said, if Amy is fired from the company, what will happen to the family she supports? Thinking about Amy, I couldn't help but raise my voice. Whether to accept or reject a marriage proposal should be a personal choice. To fire someone just because they declined is truly wrong. Isn't this an abuse of power? My words made Matt's face turn red. Then the CEO's wife said, Stop blaming Matt. You're not needed here. Haha, you're fired too. I had predicted this would happen before I even made my appeal for Amy. However, to be dismissed without even being listened to properly? There's a limit to looking down on someone. The CEO, joining in with his wife, continued the conversation. That's right. Haha, you're fired. Matt was laughing nearby. I was frustrated. However, the thought of finally being free from the CEO's family felt refreshing. "See? Don't ever come back," Matt said. With Matt's words as the signal, I left the company without saying anything and headed straight to Amy's house. I told Amy about what had happened at the company today. Amy looked remorseful. "You didn't have to say that. For someone like me, if you hadn't, you wouldn't have been fired," she said, looking into my face. However, I smiled and said, "Actually, there's been a company that's been wanting me to work for them for a while now. It's the job I've always wanted to do, so I'm thinking of taking on the challenge." With that, Amy's face lit up with relief. Months passed, and I got used to the new company. I'm enjoying my work more than when I was at SCK Hockey Corporation. There's not a single person who looks down on me because I'm a high school graduate. The president is kind to me, a world of difference from the company I used to work for. And today is an important day. I was psyched up. "John, you're nervous, aren't you?" "It's okay, because I'm with you," Amy said, handing me a can of coffee. I accepted the can of coffee. Yes, when I was transferring to the current company, I asked the president if Amy could transfer with me. Surprisingly, the president warmly welcomed both of us. Since then, Amy and I have often worked together as a pair. Today, we were supposed to go somewhere. That place is... Excuse us. As Amy and I entered the company, we saw the president's wife and Matt chatting over coffee. Brown Industries has recently increased its sales by an extraordinary amount. "We need to step up our game, or we'll be left behind," they said. The two noticed our presence, stopped their conversation, and looked at us. "What? You've come back to this company. Unfortunately, you're no longer needed." "Really? Please leave, and quickly." The two tried to drive Amy and me out. That's when I handed a business card to Matt. The business card read, "John, Development Director at Brown Industries." Matt was shocked and slumped into the sofa. Seeing this, the president's wife also looked at my business card, seemingly unable to close her mouth in surprise. Then the president arrived. He saw my business card and asked, How come you're with our rival company, Brown Industries?" "Yes," I replied. After being fired from SCK Corporation, I transferred to Brown Industries, a company that had been inviting me to join them for some time. The part I designed and produced caught the eye of Brown Industries' president. Brown welcomed me as the development director. I am nothing but grateful to Brown for letting me work the way I want to every day. The president snorted at my words. There are all sorts of people, aren't there? Ignoring the president's comment, I continued speaking. "So today, I came to discuss something important. From now on, all parts used by SCK Corporation will be handled by our company. So I came to introduce myself." The president and Matt looked at us as if they couldn't believe it. "There's no way that's true. What nonsense are you talking about? Just because we fired you, you think you're getting revenge. This isn't revenge at all. Come up with a more believable lie." I sighed and said, "I'm not lying, so please feel free to call SCK Corporation and check." The president immediately began to make the call. "Thank you for always your support." About the deal. What? Why is that?" "Understood." The president hung up the phone, looking stunned. "Dad, what happened? These people are lying, right?" The two pressed the president for answers. Then, weakly, the president said, "What they're saying is true. From now on, all parts will be ordered from Brown Industries. Our company is finished." Why did they suddenly decide to order exclusively from Brown Industries? Matt asked, not satisfied with the explanation. Looking down, the CEO said, "It seems the parts from Brown Industries are closer to what SCK Corporation needs." The CEO's wife and Matt were disheartened. Then the CEO clung to me. "Who's developing and designing the parts at Brown Industries?" Amy looked at my face and nodded. The person you've been calling incompetent and uneducated, John, is the one designing everything," Amy loudly declared. The CEO's eyes widened as he looked at me. I involuntarily averted my eyes from the CEO and then signaled to Amy. "Well, we've said what we needed to say, so we'll be taking our leave." I left a company with Amy, and then the CEO desperately chased after us. I was startled because the CEO had such an intense expression. "Wait, please. Why did you quit? I'll raise your salary. Just come back immediately." The CEO grabbed my arm and wouldn't let go. The CEO's wife, who had chased after us, looked at my face and said, "After all, John, you are a vital asset our company needs. We'll double your salary." Despite having looked down on me for my lack of education, this is their tune now that they see I can benefit the company. I tried to remain calm, even though I was furious. "And sure, but my annual salary is $1 million, I said. The CEO was so surprised by my words that he sat down right there. "Surely, you can't be serious about $1 million. "It's true," I replied. "John has been developing parts for various companies, not just for our corporation, but also at Brown Industries. Thanks to that, Brown Industries' profits have been skyrocketing." Matt and the CEO's wife fell silent. They both knew that Brown Industries had been doing well recently. That's probably why they were convinced by Amy's story. But still, the CEO persisted in appealing to me. "Please, would you consider coming back to my company once more? Amy is welcome to join as well, and I'll make sure you're both treated as executives." "Amy," and I sighed. "After firing John and me, you have the nerve to say that?" Amy snapped. "It's too late to change your attitude now. We don't want to work under cold-hearted people like you." With that, we left. The CEO's family was stunned by Amy's words. Then Amy pulled on my arm, and we left Sakaki Corporation. From inside, we could hear what sounded like the CEO's cries echoing, but neither Amy nor I ever looked back. That felt refreshing. "Now those people won't be showing their faces around anymore," Amy said. I nodded slightly at Amy's words. However, there was one thing that didn't sit right with me. It was about the employees left behind at Sakaki Corporation. Whether the CEO's family went to hell was none of my business, but I did want to rescue the innocent employees. So, I negotiated with Brown to see if Brown Industries could take in all the employees from Sakaki Corporation. Surprisingly, Brown readily accepted my proposal. Shortly thereafter, Sakaki Corporation went bankrupt, and as promised, Brown Industries took in all the employees who had worked at Sakaki Corporation. "John, thank you. Now I can take care of my family." The employees thanked me with tears in their eyes. I was really glad I could be of help to everyone. I felt truly relieved. 2 years passed. As for what happened to the CEO's family, Matt attempted to start a new company using the CEO's hidden assets, but failed to make it work, ending up with increasing debts. Eventually, that company too went bankrupt. What remained was a significant amount of debt. Matt is now working 3 part-time jobs from early morning until late at night to pay off the debts. Meanwhile, both the CEO and his wife have also started working part-time jobs to help pay off Matt's debts. Their struggles with the unfamiliar life of part-time work do look somewhat pitiable, but it's probably karma. I hope they learn to cherish those around them and lead a better life from now on. As for me, about the next project, I'd like to entrust it to you again, if that's okay. "Yes, of course. I'll do my best," I replied. Work is going smoothly, and I have even more responsibilities than before. Along with that, my salary has increased. The trust I get from President Brown is also stronger. Sometimes, I wonder if it's really okay to enjoy my work this much because it's so fun. Can you take care of N today? I think I'll have to work overtime. Sorry, there's some hamburger steak I made in the fridge, so please eat that. Okay, good luck with the overtime. I got ready to go home, and stopped by the daycare to pick up my daughter, Anne. Yes, Amy and I have been married for 2 years now. When we decided to get married, both of our mothers cried tears of joy. At that moment, Amy and I were delighted to have been able to make our parents so happy. Currently, Amy's mother, who is frail, is also living with us. Between us, we have a 1.5-year-old daughter, Anne. Amy, while working, also doesn't neglect household duties for me and Anne. I'm truly grateful to Amy. And, spotting me, ran over with a smile. Daddy, I picked hen up. Hamburger steak for dinner tonight. I'm looking forward to Amy's hamburger steak. It's the best in the world. Thinking such thoughts, I started my way home. I plan to continue cherishing my family and dedicating myself to work. $300 million is just too much pressure. That's too much for me. After yelling in agony, the man fled in some direction. He works for the company where I am employed as an interpreter. The president, Mr. Armstrong, and Kevin, the head of sales, were with us on this particular day as we made our way to the assigned meeting room for a business meeting with a large multinational organization. From the rear seat, he must have heard Mr. Armstrong exclaim, "If we pull this off, a $300 million revenue boost might just be within reach." I proposed that we take a little bathroom break at a convenience store after observing the interpreter hold his stomach due to nervousness. However, as soon as he got back to the car from the store, he broke down in tears and fled with a resolute expression. Mr. Armstrong and the others seemed very worried, so I said, "Please, let me handle this." This marked the start of my journey, one in which I assumed tasks well beyond my typical secretarial obligations. I'm 30 years old, and my name is Brandon. At X Corporation, I serve as the president's executive assistant. Managing Mr. Armstrong's calendar, setting up conference spaces and staff as needed, and helping him with anything he needs are all part of my job. I'd occasionally act as a driver as well, taking other executives along with Mr. Armstrong. Although I recall first being somewhat anxious about driving senior executives, I've become accustomed to driving since I obtained my license. I've occasionally taken road vacations with friends, but when top executives are involved, the pressure is a little more. One day, I went to Mr. Armstrong's office after finishing a research project he had asked me to do. I opened the door and said, "Excuse me." Mr. Armstrong and 2 other suit-clad coworkers were seated there. They were seated around a center chair and engaged in a serious conversation. However, they all turned to face me as soon as I spoke. Oh, Brandon. Kevin, the head of sales, was the one who mentioned that. He waved his hand casually and spoke in a comfortable tone. Timothy, the company's interpreter, mumbled, "Ah, hello, Brandon," with a small bow and anxiously glancing about. I nodded to everyone and started making coffee. For this crucial impending meeting, Mr. Armstrong personally put together a team consisting of Timothy, Kevin, and himself. This was one of many recent meetings in the president's office, and they appeared to have been talking about their intentions. Mr. Armstrong, regarding this part of the document, "Yes, it might be best to revise that section." The calming scent of the coffee seemed to ease the tense atmosphere as I poured it. I placed a cup in front of each of them and stood back to watch in silence. I probably won't be at a make-or-break meeting like this because I'm only the president's assistant. These 3 must be under a lot more pressure than I am, even though I take my obligations seriously. I lead a rather tranquil existence. During the week, I work, and on the weekends, I go shopping, watch movies, or just idly browse the mall. Even though I don't have a partner, I kind of like having the ability to do anything I want in my spare time. Sorry, I'm spending my next day off with my wife. Even while I occasionally feel a little alone when my friends decline invites to hang together, I don't really find myself wishing I had a partner now that some of them have started getting married. I've been able to have a happy life and enjoy the small pleasure of being happy without having many serious grievances. By the way, Kevin strikes me as having a kind, laid-back personality. Kevin, could you please check this? Yes, it does look fantastic. As always, I appreciate your attention to detail. I've seen him interacting with his team several times, and he never loses his warm smile. It's not a forced smile. Every word he says genuinely feels like it comes from the heart. The sales department he leads also seems to share a harmonious, trouble-free atmosphere. The entire team embodies that same gentle, positive vibe Kevin brings. However, he's not entirely without ambition or dedication to his work. Kevin's passion for each task is contagious, motivating his team to bring their best efforts too. I've often looked up to Kevin's work ethic since I joined this company. Each time, I'd think, I need to work harder, just like him. Given how diligent and capable he is, it's no wonder Mr. Armstrong chose to put him on this team. With Kevin involved, it feels like things are bound to go smoothly. Our other team member, Timothy, the interpreter, is my peer. I sat near him at our orientation, and at one point, I asked him how he ended up joining the company. When I spoke to him, he reacted with a surprised, "Had, what's up?" which, in its own way, became a memorable first impression. Apparently, he'd been going to kids' English classes since he was very young. By the time he reached upper elementary school, he'd nearly mastered English, so he started learning other languages too. It was so exciting watching my knowledge expand and seeing myself improve over time until I could speak fluently without stumbling. Timothy spoke those words, lowering his gaze nostalgically, as if reminiscing about that moment. His interest in languages never waned, and eventually he went to the nation's top university to study linguistics. After graduating, he worked freelance as an interpreter and in language-related roles before joining X Corporation as a full-time employee. Timothy is 29, a little younger than me. Regardless of age, I respect him just as much as I do Kevin because he's incredibly skilled. But even someone as capable as Timothy has his challenges. He's rather shy, prone to anxiety, and has trouble expressing his opinions. I've seen him a few times in discussions with Mr. Armstrong and Kevin. When asked, "So, Timothy, what do you think?" he often turns red, looking a bit panicked. He stammers, barely able to get a word out. If he's this way around his own colleagues, dealing with unfamiliar clients during business talks must be even more challenging. Apparently, the stress sometimes causes stomach issues. He would murmur, excuse me, I need to go to the restroom, and end up hiding out there for about 10 minutes. For this reason, any meetings involving Timothy are scheduled with extra time as a buffer. He keeps stomach medicine on hand at all times, not just in his bag, but in his suit pocket, too. I've even seen the small medicine case fall out when he leans over occasionally. But his language skills are so exceptional that his nervousness pales in comparison, making him one of the company's top assets. Around the time Timothy joined, the company started handling more international consultations, and his presence gave a noticeable boost to those efforts. Of course, this is only mentioned in his absence to avoid adding to his nerves. Countless discussions took place in the president's office. Finally, the day came for our team to head out for an important business meeting. We planned to meet at the station near the company, and then I'd drive us to the location. "Hey, good morning, Brandon." "Good morning, Mr. Armstrong." Mr. Armstrong arrived 10 minutes early. Kevin joined us around the same time, and I gave them a quick nod. "Thanks for driving today, Brandon." "Yes, I will drive safely." With that, we waited for the last member, Timothy. As Mr. Armstrong and Kevin talked over the meeting, I kept glancing down at my watch. The ticking hands moved closer to the meeting time, and my heartbeat grew louder with each passing second. There was no sign of him at all. I looked around, but I couldn't spot anyone who looked like him. I quickly took out my phone and called, but all I got was the soulless beeping of an unanswered call. Has Timothy still not shown up? Mr. Armstrong asked, his face starting to show some concern. Could he be feeling unwell, or did something happen on his way out of the house? Just as I began to worry about Timothy's whereabouts, I heard a breathless voice. Sorry for the delay. I'm so sorry for keeping you waiting. Timothy finally showed up, rushing in a few minutes after our meeting time. He explained that he had been hit with severe stomach pains from the nerves, and since he was running, he hadn't noticed my call. Mr. Armstrong, Kevin, and I all sighed in relief. Thank goodness. For a moment, I feared we were starting the day off with an unexpected incident. But it looks like we're back on track. I'm truly sorry, Timothy said, his expression heavy with guilt. As Mr. Armstrong and Kevin assured him that it was all fine, Timothy kept apologizing repeatedly. Our client today was a company with a major international presence. While I kept my eyes on the road, I listened to snippets of conversation between Mr. Armstrong and Kevin, as though I were tuning in to a radio show. It's hard to believe this opportunity finally came through. Yes, our persistence paid off. The voices of Mr. Armstrong and Kevin sounded as if they were savoring their joy. It seemed they had been reaching out to the other party for years, and now, after much effort, they finally made it happen. Clearly, they were putting everything into this deal. The client company is a true giant in its field. Their representative was scheduled to fly back home today, but had made time for this meeting right before departure. If this works out, that $300 million revenue goal could actually become a reality. Through the rearview mirror, I could see Mr. Armstrong's excited grin as he clenched his fist with confidence, while Kevin responded with a gentle smile. Timothy, in the passenger seat, went pale and began to tremble visibly. Are you all right? Are you sure you're okay? His shaking was so intense that I could feel it even from where I sat. No matter how hard I tried, it kept slipping into the corner of my vision. I knew I should focus, but my eyes kept darting over to it involuntarily. Yes, I'm fine, sorry, he said. But it was clear he didn't mean it. His voice and body were both trembling, and his words faltered at the end. He was far more nervous now than he was during the discussion at our office. That's just how he is under pressure. A $300 million figure was weighing heavily on his shoulders. Here, take this if it helps. At a red light, I handed him a honey candy from the stash I kept in the car, hoping it might offer him a little comfort. Oh, thank you. Timothy quickly tried to put it in his mouth, but his hands were trembling, and he struggled to open the wrapper. After about 5 minutes, the amber-colored candy finally entered his mouth, only highlighting his nervousness even more. The hard clinking sound of the candy against his teeth continued until it fully melted. While I was curious about the conversation between Mr. Armstrong and Kevin, my mind was mostly occupied by concern for Timothy. When I noticed him leaning forward and clutching his stomach, I decided to stop at a convenience store for a restroom break. Sorry, I need to use the restroom. Timothy quickly got permission from the cashier before dashing into the restroom. Do you think he'll be all right? I asked. He may be struggling now, but I'm sure once we're in the meeting, he'll deliver as usual. Mr. Armstrong and Kevin watched him with worry, but their conversation soon drifted back to the upcoming deal, their excitement palpable. This is a $300 million business, the highest in our company's history. Let's hope it all goes as planned. They continued, their enthusiasm turning to optimistic projections. Caught up in their high spirits, I couldn't help but join in, getting excited along with them as we chatted away, our voices filling the car with lively anticipation. As we continued talking for a while, Mr. Armstrong's phone buzzed, signaling an incoming call. He held it to his ear and began speaking about something, so I turned my gaze toward the convenience store entrance, waiting for Timothy to come out. Just then, right on cue, he appeared and glanced around the parking lot with a troubled look. His eyes darted in every direction as if searching for something. Did he forget where we parked the car? I rolled down the driver's window and called out, "Timothy, over here." He snapped his head up at the sound and seemed like he would come straight to the passenger side. But instead, he muttered, uh-oh, and began groaning. Something was definitely wrong. His body was trembling even more than before our break. Even from a slight distance, I could see his lips had lost all color. His eyes were wide, as if they might pop out of his head at any moment. As I looked on, stunned with my mouth slightly agape, Timothy threw out a shocking statement. $300 million. It's too much for me. I can't handle a role that important. What? Wait, Timothy. But before I knew it, he was sobbing and sprinting away. Even random passersby were caught off guard by the bizarre scene, staring at him as they passed. But Timothy paid them no mind, increasing the distance between us without slowing down. "Timothy, where are you going?" I quickly put the drink I was holding into the cup holder, threw open the door, and prepared to chase after him. Just as I stepped out, Mr. Armstrong's sharp voice called out from behind me. "Wait, Brandon. I just got a call from John, our business associate. It seems John had requested to move up the meeting time. The destination is just up ahead. I can handle the situation," he said, though it would mean giving up on following Timothy. But Mr. Armstrong, what about Timothy? Usually, Kevin always wore a calm smile, but even he looked distressed now, his face tense. Mr. Armstrong pressed a hand to his forehead, his face falling. He must have been torn between not wanting to inconvenience the client who arranged this opportunity and his concern over Timothy. I pressed my lips together tightly, waiting for his decision. It felt like an endless silence stretched on. It was so quiet it seemed like we were the only ones left in the world. But at last, Mr. Armstrong slowly began to speak. "Timothy is a grown man. He's not a helpless child. He looked upset, but he should be able to catch a ride home, and he has a phone, so we can reach him. I doubt he'll run into any real trouble." At that, Kevin interrupted urgently. "But he's our interpreter for this deal, isn't he? When it comes to high-level business English, well, our language skills are limited." Mr. Armstrong's eyes widened, and he groaned. "Oh, that's right." Though he appeared composed, the air around him made it clear he was actually panicking inside. Should we still try to catch up with him? But if we do, then we'll be cutting it too close to the appointment time. While Mr. Armstrong and Kevin deliberated, time continued to tick away mercilessly. Noticing how fast the clock was moving toward the appointment time, Mr. Armstrong's anxiety visibly increased. A faint sheen of cold sweat was beginning to form on his forehead. Watching him like that, an idea suddenly came to me. Maybe this was my chance to repay Mr. Armstrong. The ticking second hand on my watch, the tense voices of Mr. Armstrong and Kevin, and no other solution coming to mind, I tightened my fist subtly as if gathering my resolve. "Mr. Armstrong, I have a suggestion." Both of them flinched at my voice, turning to look at me almost simultaneously. Given how Timothy looked, I doubt he'll be back anytime soon. Why don't you leave this to me? "Brandon?" Kevin was the first to react, while Mr. Armstrong, eyes wide, stared intently at me, forgetting even to blink. I may not speak multiple languages like Timothy, but I can handle English just fine. My words made the two of them exchange glances. Mr. Armstrong briefly glanced at his watch, then nodded as if he had made up his mind. "All right, I'll leave the interpreting to you." Relieved that they trusted me in this high-stakes situation, I let out a quiet "thank you," feeling a weight lift from my chest. I was worried about Timothy, but right now, we had no choice but to move forward with the meeting. Leaving the convenience store behind, we headed to the rental conference room near the airport. The clients were already there, and following Mr. Armstrong's lead, we each greeted them and exchanged handshakes. Everything moved quickly, without a moment to catch our breath. I wondered, absent-mindedly, if waiting around for them would have made me even more nervous. The client's president was John Smith. When I shook hands with him, he held on tightly, not letting go. It felt like he held my hand far longer than he had with Mr. Armstrong or Kevin. What's going on? As I tilted my head slightly in confusion, he looked me over intently and blurted out in surprise, "Are you Brandon? I've been looking for you. I finally found you." Both Mr. Armstrong and Kevin let out sounds of shock alongside me. I hadn't expected my name to come up here, of all places. It seemed he knew who I was, but I had no memory of him. As I glanced down, trying to search my memory, John began speaking. "We met once when you were in college," he said, a hint of nostalgia in his voice and perhaps a touch of disappointment that I didn't remember. John's words took my breath away. Memories from before I started working as the executive assistant to the president flooded back like a flashback. I'd always loved studying, or maybe it was more that I had an intense curiosity. I hated the feeling of not knowing something. Just doing the worksheets from school wasn't enough, so I'd buy extra study books myself and never missed a chance to review and prepare. That drive helped me get into Harvard University after high school. The excitement of studying specialized topics thrilled me, and I remember not being able to sleep the night before my first class. A good memory in its own way. Even after starting college, my thirst for knowledge and curiosity for learning never slowed down, and I managed to keep up good grades. One day in a certain class, we had a group discussion. I'll be the facilitator. I volunteered right away, and since no one objected, I took the lead. The discussion went smoothly, with everyone contributing ideas, making it a productive and enjoyable experience. We even reached a solid conclusion within the time limit, leaving us all with a satisfying sense of completion. John had been watching that discussion. He had connections with people at the university and had taken the opportunity to observe students. Apparently, I had caught his eye. "Hey, do you have a moment after the class?" he called out to me. When I turned around, I saw an unfamiliar adult standing there. Though he was smiling warmly, I remember being cautious at first, unsure of his intentions. Yes. What is it?" In response to my guarded answer, John replied enthusiastically, "Your skills are truly impressive." I was so shocked by the unexpected compliment that I froze, mouth slightly open. Then he continued, his words spilling out with excitement. "Do you know what you want to do after college?" Even though I left Japan to attend this university, I hadn't really figured out my future plans. I mumbled, unsure of what to say, but I couldn't lie or try to act impressive. When I admitted honestly that I hadn't decided, he responded with an exaggerated, "What? That's practically a loss for the world." That was definitely an overstatement. Not sure whether to laugh or take him seriously, I gave a faint, uncertain smile. "Then how about coming to work for us?" He mentioned that he runs a company in the U.S. The business card and introduction materials he rummaged through and handed me bore the name I Corporation. "A talent like yours would be welcome any time," he said with a playful wink before practically skipping away with a cheerful stride, leaving me there, mouth agape. It was such a memorable encounter. But as time passed and graduation approached, I had completely forgotten his offer. The business card, once carefully placed somewhere noticeable, had somehow slipped to the back of my drawer. Back then, my mind was filled with thoughts of returning to Japan. I missed my childhood home, the delicious seafood, and the safe streets. So, I decided not to pursue a job in the U.S. and return to Japan with the Harvard degree I had worked so hard for. Looking back now, I feel a bit embarrassed, but at the time, I was quite full of myself. I thought, surely any company would want someone like me, and I had a rather arrogant attitude. As it turned out, my prediction was spot on. Every company wanted someone with a Harvard degree like mine. Each time I mentioned the university's name in a job interview, I saw a shift in the interviewer's expression. Initially uninterested, they gradually lit up, their eyes sparkling as if they'd stumbled upon a hidden treasure. I found it amusing and took satisfaction in feeling like I was the one choosing a company to work for, which now feels like a regrettable part of my past. Even though I received multiple job offers, I stubbornly insisted on only accepting a position that met all my conditions. So, it took quite a while to find a company that fit. Once I finally started working in Japan, though, my career was far from smooth. My pride kept me from following my boss's instructions, and my resistance to their way of working left me isolated. I can't stand working with him, I overheard senior employees saying in the empty break room. He never listens to instructions. He's so overconfident. Glad I didn't have to train him. It would have just been extra stress. I came across comments like that more than once or twice. Naturally, none of them were positive, and it was always complaints about me. But I couldn't rein in my inflated pride and ended up blaming everyone else, thinking they just don't understand me. Of course, this led to further alienation from my colleagues, and when I clashed with my boss over a project during my second year, I impulsively quit. Still, my arrogance didn't go away. I'd assumed I'd find a new job quickly. I did get a few offers, but none matched the conditions of the company I had just left. If only I'd dropped the mindset of being the one doing the choosing, I might have found a job easily. Instead, I went without work for 2 years. During that time, I received invitations to class reunions and messages from old friends asking me to go out, but I turned them all down. I was mortified by the thought of anyone laughing at me as the unemployed Harvard graduate. I'm talented, so why did things turn out like this? After being lost in these thoughts for half a year, I felt something snap in my mind, like a crack splitting through me. Maybe it was the sound of my overblown pride shattering, or maybe my mind finally reaching its limit. Suddenly, I had this idea of applying for jobs as if I only had a high school diploma to even deceive myself. Although it took time to get hired, one company did bring me to the final interview with the president. That was X Corporation, the very company where I'd eventually work as an assistant. I had no other options left. I had to make it happen. Whatever questions they asked, I'd have to answer flawlessly. With that mindset, I went in, but I was left speechless almost immediately after the interview began. "You're not really a high school graduate, are you?" It was Mr. Armstrong who cornered me with that question right from the start. Of course, a hastily faked resume from an amateur would be exposed immediately. Regret washed over me slowly, and without a second thought, I dropped to my knees and apologized sincerely. "I'm terribly sorry." The only thought in my mind at that moment was, it's over. I couldn't imagine any scenario where I'd still be considered for the position. I was fully expecting him to tell me to leave, but instead, I heard unexpected words. "I get the feeling that you're actually a sincere, hard-working person. Perhaps so diligent that you veered off track and ended up falsifying your background. That's the impression I get from you." There was a kind tone in his voice, completely free of any judgment. Hearing that, my hardened heart softened, and I couldn't stop the tears from streaming down my face. To my shock, Mr. Armstrong smiled and told me he would forgive what I had done and hire me as his assistant. "Thank you so much." I pressed my forehead to the floor once more out of deep gratitude and vowed never to deceive others for my own selfish reasons again. And so, I began my journey as his assistant, which brings me to where I am today. Whenever I recall those days, especially my behavior during the job search, I still get chills down my arms. Yet, over time, I've come to see those experiences as essential. With John's high regard for me, the business meeting went smoothly. We even received the encouraging words, "I'd love to seriously consider this proposal." In the end, he added, "Honestly, I'd like Brandon to join our company, but if you've chosen a place, then I hope you can thrive there." His tone held a familiar blend of nostalgia and loneliness, just like before the business meeting. However, this time it seemed to carry even more warmth. We shook hands once more, and I drove him to the airport instead of him taking a taxi. Watching him walk away, I felt a sense of closure. A few days after the meeting, Timothy still hadn't shown up at the office since his escape from the convenience store. Just when I began wondering if he would ever return, Mr. Armstrong told me, "Brandon, we managed to get in touch with Timothy." I finished up the research task Mr. Armstrong had assigned me, gathered my laptop and files, and headed to his office. "Excuse me," I said, stepping in with a quick greeting, only to find Mr. Armstrong holding the receiver to his ear. "Yes, that's right. Come to my office right away," he said on the internal line. He gestured for me to come in with a wave, so I moved forward and set my things on the central table. A few minutes later, Kevin entered the office after me. Then Timothy arrived, walking with an awkward gait. "Mr. Armstrong, what's this about?" It seemed I was the only one who knew what was about to be discussed. Kevin looked puzzled, and Timothy, his head down, was trembling slightly, clearly feeling uneasy. After looking at each of us in turn, Mr. Armstrong spoke in a solemn tone. "Brandon, please start with your report." His voice wasn't particularly loud, but it filled the room with authority. I nodded slowly and turned to Kevin. "Kevin, have you heard a certain rumor going around the company?" "A rumor?" Caught off guard by my question, he blinked in surprise. "It's regarding a company we could call a rival, Z Corporation." His gaze drifted into the air as if searching his memory, though in truth, it was likely just to avoid eye contact with me. "Oh yes, I remember. There's talk that Z Corporation has been attempting to disrupt our work and poach our talent. But it's just a rumor, right?" After he finished speaking in one breath, he twisted his lips into a crooked smile, an obviously forced expression, completely unlike his usual demeanor. I narrowed my eyes slightly. "Yes, that's the one. It would be nice if it were just a rumor, don't you think so, Timothy?" I asked, glancing between Kevin and Timothy. Timothy, probably not expecting the conversation to shift to him, responded with a pathetic, "Huh. Yes." I sighed quietly and said, "Unfortunately, it's not just a rumor." Opening my laptop, I played an audio file. A familiar voice filled the room. "Just before the meeting, the interpreter is set to run away. Neither I nor Mr. Armstrong can handle advanced English, so if the interpreter leaves, the deal's off." "What? No way." Kevin's face went stiff, his mouth opening and closing silently, struggling to process the words he just heard. He reached out, perhaps to stop me from playing further, but the next words rooted him to the spot as if he'd been nailed in place. "Oh, don't worry. I already promised him 30% of the payment. No one can resist money. And as for your company, when I joined Z Corporation, you did promise to give me a better deal than X Corporation, right?" The voice was twisted and malicious, far from the way Kevin usually sounded. To think he'd hidden such a dark side while presenting himself as an ideal employee at X Corporation. Realizing he couldn't escape the truth any longer, both Kevin and Timothy collapsed to the floor, their legs trembling like newborn fawns. When questioned, they confessed everything. With the undeniable evidence of the recording, they must have realized there was no point in hiding it any longer. Their voices and expressions conveyed resignation, and they seemed almost ready to give up. Kevin admitted that he planned to jump ship to Z Corporation for better treatment, with the additional reward of sabotaging X Corporation's $300 million deal. Timothy, on the other hand, had been instructed to flee right before the meeting, earning 30% of the sabotage fee for doing so. So, the trembling he'd shown at the convenience store was all an act. "We're so sorry. Please forgive us." Both of them bowed deeply, their heads almost hitting the floor as they begged for mercy. Their desperate display reminded me of my own interview with Mr. Armstrong, but the words Mr. Armstrong had for them this time were nothing like those he'd once spoken to me. "This is an unforgivable betrayal of the company." His voice was cold and cutting like a shard of ice. His eyes, devoid of any warmth, were pitch black. Watching the two of them shrink under his gaze, I felt conflicted, painfully aware that I was hardly in a position to judge anyone's lies. In the end, both Kevin and Timothy were fired. I took over the interpreter role temporarily, though I wasn't able to cover any languages other than English. To address this, I plan to work closely with HR to recruit someone new for the role. A while later, the deal with John's White Corporation was successfully finalized. Now, to make Mr. Armstrong's goal of that $300 million a reality, I'd need to work hard to build a strong relationship of trust with John. Securing the deal was just the starting line, and the road ahead was sure to be busy. Still, I felt a sense of relief, believing I had finally repaid Mr. Armstrong. Not that he ever seemed to view his generosity toward me as a debt I needed to repay. Even if I were to mention it, he would likely tilt his head in confusion. But that's fine. This is something personal to me. I should have repaid the debt for being hired. Next, I need to start repaying the kindness shown and forgiving the lies I told. With that resolve in my heart, I headed to an important meeting with John, ready to face what lay ahead.